I find building relationships can sometimes be hard to break the ice, but then once I met someone and we start talking, it becomes a lot easier. It's just that beginning part of trying to find a common ground with them. I think that's what I struggle hard with.
I've always had quite a close, tight-knit group through my school days. I'm still quite close with them. You know, you obviously get a bit of stick here and there, but you know, it's kind of just like teenage playground chat. It's fine. Yeah, again, I was lucky. I never really got shouted out just because of it. There's a few things that I did, or maybe I'd have like a bit of a tantrum or something if we were on holiday, and they'd be like, yeah, take your meds or something like that, which, you know, was a bit of a kick in the teeth, but yeah, I mean, I didn't really notice it till I went to university. University was a bit of a tricky time for me. I went up to Manchester, and you know, coming from the sheltered environment I was at, the school I was in, you know, when you're kind of just in the world for yourself, I think that's where I really started to learn that I am much more different than most people. You know, I didn't really know how to get out there, make friends. I was quite scared of it. Didn't really put myself in places to meet people. Became a bit recluse, but that whole experience is part of why I'm doing what I'm doing now.
The 3 years that he was out of school at those sort of formative years were really detrimental. So he missed out on the banter in the playground. You know, he'd been vice captain of his rugby team. He'd missed out on those opportunities to make friends and keep friends. So going back into education, his interest, not surprisingly perhaps as a teenage boy, was more in, I want to build friendships rather than I'm desperate to learn more maths. And so starting at this new school was more beneficial, I'd say, for his social confidence than it was for his educational. He was able to pick up GCSE subjects in 3 months and get straight A's, but it was actually the building of friendships that touched our hearts more than his academic achievement.
Yeah, I worry about his friendships for the future, you know, people understanding Ben, and because he can't, you know, communicate as well as we can.
In terms of friendships, I always thought I was a bad friend because I didn't keep in touch, or I'd keep in touch a lot and then completely off the radar. You know, there's this object permanence thing, and of course people aren't objects. However, out of sight, out of mind. So I'd have people that I would consider best friends, and still do, because they live like elsewhere. I don't think about them for a long time, and I used to think, God, I'm such a terrible person, you know? But now I'm like, I'm not a terrible person. My brain just is full up with other stuff. Now I can be honest and say, look, yes, I forgot your birthday. I didn't mean to. I mean no ill intent. Here's your birthday present. And they're very accepting.
My diagnosis really made a lot of sense to me because I have had senior roles in a number of corporates before I set up my own business. And actually, I would do a great job at the job, but the bit I struggled with was managing and maintaining the relationships. Partly because you just get that hyper focus on something, and then it can be quite hard to kind of remember that you've got to do that relationship bit as well.
So how do you have a normal adult life, a normal family life with all of that going on? It proved challenging. There were some friends who distanced themselves from us. They found it too difficult. Our time out as a couple, as a family, became few and far between. Holidays were a no-no because on one holiday I remember we went to a chalet and he didn't leave the chalet for the entire week that we were there. You know, so you have to readjust and learn to live with the here and now.
It's not that people don't care and, you know, they want to understand, but everybody's doing all the normal things and the normal activities, and we just can't do that. We can't be the same. And you then start to feel that you're a burden, and then, you know, slowly you'll be excluded. So, you know, if we were to go for a day trip and, you know, you're going to a theme park, let's say, you know, Ben might get there and it's all too much and he's, you know, he just can't cope and we've had to go home. So, yeah, it's really hard unless you're around people in a similar situation. It's not that you want to be isolated. I think you just can naturally feel alone because you can't do what everybody else is doing. If that makes sense.
Friends with neurotypical families can be tricky when you sort of you have children at the same time and they all kind of develop sort of in a similar way and they all look like they're going down the same path, and then you end up going down a different path, and perhaps you haven't got the flexibility that families with neurotypical children would have, that you can just get them in the car and they can go out. Whereas if you have a child with chronic anxiety and PDA, they often can't leave the house. So sort of family get-togethers or just an afternoon out at the cinema doesn't always work. So that initially, when we started dealing with the challenges around PDA, that initially was tricky for everybody, but you make adjustments, and your friends, you'd like to think, adapt with you, and our friends have been really supportive. So.
But I get home, I'm not interested in having friends. My son is the same. So he's got his online friends that he talks to, he plays Call of Duty and he does all that sort of stuff, but he's not interested in having those friendships. Now that's easy for me to understand because I'm the same. I think if I was a parent who wasn't autistic, I'd be scared to death that it's his birthday and nobody wants to come over. He doesn't really know anybody. We've never really seen any of his friends. But I know that he's like me. And so actually I take comfort in being autistic, having an autistic son. And he will do exactly the same thing, because whether we like it or not, in this world you have to pretend to be neurotypical when you're not, to fit in. You have to. Because you're going to go into a job where you're going to be surrounded by people that feel more comfortable when you are more like them. And so all the way through his life, every single different developmental stage of his life, I've been teaching him, it sounds awful, but I've been teaching him to mask. I've been teaching him techniques to deal with things. When you feel this way, this is what you do. When this is happening to you, this is what you can do about it. Teaching him techniques, teaching him ways to deal with being divergent in a neurotypical world is really important. Because he's always going to be neurodivergent. He is going to have to live in a world that is neurotypical. It's getting increasingly easier to live as a neurodivergent person in a neurotypical existence, but he's still going to have that facade.
Yeah, I mean, romance is definitely not my strong suit. It's not. I'd like to think I'm a very confident bloke when it comes to going out there. I'll walk into any room with anyone and have a chat with them, whatever. But I've never really had proper relationships. Longest ones 6 to 8 months, and I don't know whether that is just my neurodiversity, probably. But yeah, I attach too quickly, definitely. You overthink things. I think there's a line for me, like at the minute I'm more focused on work. When I find someone who can genuinely challenge me, it might be something that I'm a lot more open to romantically, but at the minute it seems more like a chore.
I tended to be in a relationship with people that were quite controlling. I think deep down I felt that's all I deserved. When one was cheating on me, and I knew she was cheating, but she denied it, so I just went along with the denial, and that was down to self-worth. But now I'm happily married, very open about what neurodivergence brings, and and I can be choosier. If people are controlling and not very nice, I'm in a place now that I don't need to be around them.
See, those friends who, when things were really challenging, perhaps drifted by the wayside, some have now come back. Some will be watching and listening and understanding. And there's no judgment. There are times when it was difficult for others to be with us, to witness what we were going through.
I don't want to get emotional. You've hit a nerve. I think it's because you just don't want to talk about the negative, do you? Because there is a reality to the situation. Yeah, it's hard on your relationship, and I think it's hard to talk about it, and I'm sure there are many couples that can relate to the difficulties that we go through, and I think it does sometimes have a toll on your relationship. because all your energy and all your focus goes into your child. And, you know, there are times where we don't make enough time for each other. You know, all the focus is on your child, and you're not really leaving any room for each other. And I think there is a danger where, you know, you can drift apart. It'll either bring you closer together or you'll drift apart. In our situation, I think it has brought us closer together. But it also, it's just our whole life is about Ben.